It's time for this week's episode of Brandon Sports Talk, featuring in-depth interviews from those who are trending in the world of athletics. And now, here's the host of Brandon Sports Talk, Brandon Pate.
Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I have the privilege to interview the NWSL color commentator, Danielle Malagari. How are you doing today?
Great, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing good. Can you talk about how you knew that you wanted to work in professional sports?
That's a really great question. I don't think I always knew that I wanted to work in professional sports. I think the opportunity just presented itself in a way where it was something I couldn't turn down. After being a collegiate athlete and playing a little bit overseas and then coming back and playing here in the States before retirement, I was always kind of in that scene and playing with some of the same players that are still playing today. However, once I did step away from the game, the opportunity presented myself. So I kind of took it and ran with it.
What was your time like as the head coach for the Bethesda Soccer Club?
The Bethesda Soccer Club?
Yes.
Okay. It was great. I grew up in the Washington, D.C. area, and I actually played for the Bethesda Soccer Club prior to going to the University of Maryland. So I had my heartstrings were kind of tied to that club from going from a youth player to a coach. So I really enjoyed my time there. I was there for about 7 or 8 years post college, and then kind of stepped away from it for a year and then got back into it a couple years later into a different club. But I really enjoyed the atmosphere, the energy that was put into the development of the athletes to kind of better their game. So I truly enjoyed my experience there.
What was it like? You said that you played there and now that you coach there. What was the transition like from being a player, a former player, to the head coach for them?
Well, that's a great question because it was way different when I was a kid to what the kids are experiencing now. There's this large league in the United States called the ECNL, which is the Elite Club National League. And that is the highest tier league at that point when I started coaching the youth side. When I was a kid, that was not a thing. Every team just kind of was their own entity under these larger clubs. So it took a lot of getting used to because when you are in an age group, it's not just your team. You are focusing on developing kids from one team to go to the next to then build to the highest level. So it was a completely different situation than I found myself in as an athlete. So it took, like I said, getting used to, but I definitely enjoyed the time.
What was your time like as the head coach of the Montgomery Soccer?
Those kids I took over in Montgomery County as soon as I took my year away from club coaching. So I was with Bethesda, I took a year away, and then I jumped in with Montgomery Soccer Club because I truly missed it. And the girls that I worked with from when they were about 12 years old until last year when they were 18. It was an amazing experience. They are some of my favorite kids that I've ever coached. I've created a lasting bond with them through the time that I was with them, and I hope to continue watching them grow as people. But that was the team I was with the longest, so I created a good relationship with them and their families. So I really hope, I wish them the best moving forward as they go into their next step of college.
What was your accomplishments, and what did you like whenever you worked with the Washington Spirit as the head coach?
So when I was with the Washington Spirit, I was the U20 head coach for, I want to say like 2 or 3 summers. I can't even remember that far back. I guess it started in 2014, I want to say. But our accomplishments when I was the head coach for those years, we did make it to the Final Four of the Women's W League, or I guess it was called the W20s at that time. We made it to the Final Four both summers, and we took a trip down to Bradenton, Florida, at the end of like mid to late July every year, and competed in the national tournament. So for me, that was a huge step. Unfortunately, we never won. However, it was a great experience for the girls to head down. These are the types of kids who were playing in college and needed to come for a summer league team. And they put just as much time and effort into that team as they probably would any other team. So it was a really proud I was really proud of the girls that I worked with at that time, putting the effort into, developing for their collegiate season, and then going and competing at the national level.
What was the transition like for you from going from being a soccer coach to now a color commentator?
Well, I think it kind of goes hand in hand, because when I was asked to first start color commentating for the Washington Spirit, I was still coaching, and I've continued to coach through all of my time there. So I think my coaching experience 100% allowed me to obviously know the game really well, but really helped me to understand everything that I was trying to develop for the listeners. So, what I know as a coach and I can explain to my players, maybe not everybody knew as somebody, as a fan who was watching the game. So I was able to take bits and pieces that I could teach my kids and also kind of put it into play with color commentary, so that I'm also teaching the people that are watching the broadcast as well.
How has your coaching experience helped you with your color commentating experience?
Kind of, what I just said on top of that. I do have to remember, maybe not everybody that's watching knows the game of soccer. They might just be watching for entertainment purposes, or they might be watching for the fundamental breakdowns. So you have to kind of cater to all levels, right? You have to understand that a simple thing as like a square ball isn't maybe something that someone would know, just a general fan. So just being able to tweak what I'm saying and to make sure everybody's on the same page and is understanding what I'm describing that's going on in the field. I think my coaching experience has definitely helped me with that.
What is a day in the life of a color commentator for the Washington Spirit?
Well, I haven't been a color commentator for the Washington Spirit for quite some time. I want to say for the first 4 years, so 13, 14, 15, 16 were the years that I was with them. So, a typical game day is showing up an hour and a half before the game time, getting ourselves ready. Michael Minnick was the play-by-play person at the time. So he and I developed a great relationship over the 4 years that we worked together. We would definitely show up and then just kind of bounce some ideas off each other, kind of what our themes that we wanted to talk about for the game, previous games that the Spirit had played, and how we were going to build that into everything that we wanted to talk about during the game. So, we would do that for an hour, hour and a half before, and then it was go time. We would talk for 90 minutes and then, pick up, leave, and get ready for the next week.
What are some of your favorite catchphrases that you used with the Spirit?
With the Spirit? That's a great question. I don't really like to say I have a catchphrase. I do, looking back at my earlier years with the Spirit, it's all a learning process. Anytime you start any sort of job or any sort of career, it's a learning process, and you want to make sure you're not saying the same things over and over again. I think I said stuff like absolutely or for sure, and I would listen to myself. I'm like, okay, I need to move that. For the course of all of the years with the NWSL, when we just see a goal that comes out of nowhere, I think this thing I would always say is, "Are you kidding me?" And then I would be able to build off of whatever happened on the screen. So I think that's something that I have definitely used a significant amount of times.
What was it like to get the job with the NWSL as the color commentator?
Terrifying. I did it for all of those years with the Spirit. And the way that kind of happened was the owners of the Spirit at that time, Bill Lynch, and the general manager, Chris Hummer, were the owners of DC United and the general manager of DC United Women when I played for them. So when the opportunity came about for the Spirit to get a color commentator, Chris Hummer gave me a call and was like, "Hey, you know the game. You really like to talk. What are your thoughts about this? Do you want to do this?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, I guess so. Like, I'll do the best I can." So, like I said, for the first few years, it was definitely a learning experience. And then once it started going to a bigger stage where we were streaming to apps and not just YouTube, I would say it was really more intimidating, because we were in a broadcast studio where we had producers, and I was traveling down to Florida for all of those games. So it was just a completely different experience, and one I hope to continue to do when I have the ability to travel.
What was the travel like in broadcasting with different apps?
With different apps. So I think right now it's on Twitch. And then gosh, Go Sports. I don't even know. Yahoo Sports was one of the apps. Go Sports 90 or something like that was one of the apps. So it was different each year. So it took us a little bit to get used to. However, we're not actually the ones that are watching it on the apps. We're just talking about the apps that we're broadcasting on. So I don't think, I would probably say for a general fan, it was probably difficult kind of bouncing around each year. However, for us, it didn't really affect what we were trying to do.
Have you had the opportunity to be the color commentator for the U.S. women's national team?
Unfortunately, I have not. I've been doing this since 2013 and absolutely love it. But this isn't my full-time job. I'm a full-time teacher. So I would definitely say this is a summer job when the opportunity arises. Obviously, last year was quite the damper, not having any games to travel to. I think Lori Lindsay, who is a wonderful name in U.S. women's soccer, did a lot of the NWSL games. And so do a few other people. So I haven't had the opportunity to kind of crack into those games. However, there's big names in front of me: Allie Wagner, Julie Foudy with ESPN. Allie does the Fox games. So I'm actually learning all the time watching their games and hoping, when I get that opportunity to travel again for the NWSL games, I can kind of put in things that they have talked about and things that I learned from them into my commentary in hopes to take it to the next level for myself.
Of course, as you talked about, you were a teacher. How have you balanced being a teacher and being a color commentator?
Well, that's a great question because, teaching is pretty much September to June, and the league sometimes starts in March or April, depending on the year, if it's a World Cup year or an Olympic year. So, and also when I was coaching club soccer as well, I was working 7 days a week. So I wasn't really able to do many games early on in like March and April, maybe towards the end of May. And as soon as school was out in June, I was making the trips down to Florida for the broadcasting for the NWSL. So it's a lot. It was a lot to juggle. However, as soon as the summer came, I was kind of ready to go and would really prepare myself for every game that I was working, and pretty much watching every game every weekend so I could make sure, when it was my turn to go, that I was well versed in everything that was happening in the league.
What are some of your favorite memories and moments of being a color commentator for the NWSL?
Gosh, I've called so many games over the years that, I have so many great memories. I think there was one memory where Tobin Heath picked up the ball and spiked it into the ground. That was something that Michael Minnick and I got to witness when we were at the Maryland Soccerplex with the Spirit. That was something that I had never seen before, and it was something we had to kind of talk about on the broadcast. Michael and I called a lot of games with the Spirit that were just very intense, high level, back and forth. So I just think the energy and emotion that all of the athletes brought to every game was going to be different, and we were ready for it. So every game I've been a part of has been a great time for me.
What is it like to prepare for game day for the NWSL?
It's a lot. I do watch all of the games as much as I possibly can, leading up to all of, the games that I'm going to be working, and depending on who I'm working, if it's North Carolina, Portland, I'm watching all of their previous games. I have a very elaborate spreadsheet that I use that has every single player, their number, their birth date, their age, their height, their hometown, their stats, major points about them. So I spend probably a good 3 to 4 hours per team developing this spreadsheet. So for any one game, it could be 7 to 8 hours that I'm prepping for a game. And then on a typical game day, just rereading through all my notes, rewatching highlights, anything, reading up on any of the postings that I see on the web, anything I can do to make sure any news that's out there, I'm on top of it. So it's a lot of prep, but I definitely enjoy it.
Of course, how long do you know before you go to the next game?
You mean like when my schedule is?
Yes, like how far in advance do you know your schedule?
Well in advance. It's probably a month or two in advance, if not more than that. It just truly depends. If there's somebody that drops out and I have the ability to fly down, I will do anything I can to get myself down there. But yeah, I know very well in advance what games I'll be working, so I know what to prep for, and I know what sheets and that I need to start developing for that year.
What is it like to call games for Alex Morgan and watch Alex Morgan and the Orlando Pride play?
I mean, it's great. I mean, any of the national team players, it's fun to call and fun to be a part of those games because, we are essentially watching some of the best players in the world. And sometimes it's right in our backyard, especially when I was with the Spirit and I was only 10 minutes down the road to some of the top names coming in there. So it's been a while since I've called an Orlando Pride game. Gosh, I mean, looking back, probably 2019 was the last time I called one. And I actually don't think Alex was playing then. She was either hurt or I think some of the international players were out or the national team players were out. However, anytime you get to call somebody like Alex Morgan, Ali Krieger, anybody like that, Ashlyn Harris, it's quite an honor to be able to talk about what they're doing on the field and hopefully people respect what you have to say about them.
What is the difference between a color commentator and a public address announcer?
So a PA announcer is somebody who's at any of the games, somebody who is on the loudspeaker telling the fans that are present at the game what's going on the field, or who scores the goal, who's the assist. So it's a lot different because I'm on the broadcast, so I'm technically breaking down everything that's happening on the field for the fans at home that are watching. And the PA announcers are the ones at the game that are introducing, all the players that are in the lineups and anything that's happening, significant that's happening on the field. So we're very different in what we do in regards to every game.
Of course, as a color commentator, how important is it to get details right as the listeners are not being able to see what's happening on TV or vice versa?
A lot. I mean, there's a lot for us to get right. There's a lot that's happening on the screen. Everything is so fast. I think the hardest one would probably be like ice hockey color commentator. Those games go by so fast, but the NWSL games do too. And the great thing about the NWSL and the women's national team, there's so many wonderful fans and followers that a lot of people know a lot of stuff. So if I were to mess up or if I were to get something wrong, and I don't mind the criticism if somebody wants to send me a tweet or I get some sort of text from a friend like, oops, you messed up there. Like, I'm human, it happens. But it's very important to make sure we're on top of everything. But the fans definitely do keep us on our toes if we do slip up here or there.
What are some of your future plans when it comes to being a color commentator?
I would love to take this to any level possible. Right now, I see it as the highest level in the US with the NWSL. I have worked 1 or 2 college games. I've worked a couple high school games here and there that are broadcasted on smaller, like Washington Sports Network or DC. Monumental Sports Network here in DC. So I would love to take it to the next level. It's kind of, I have to continue to build my resume and build my name. I have big names in front of me. Like I said, Allie Wagner, Lori Lindsay, you have Heather O'Reilly, Julie Foudy, you have all of these big national team names ahead of you that sometimes it feels like you're clawing to try to get in, but at the end of the day, you're behind some of the best people and I love to learn from them. So if there's an opportunity that comes about where I have the ability to work a higher level game, I will absolutely jump at it and do the best I can.
What advice would you give somebody looking to become a color commentator?
Research. Do a lot of research. You are your own worst critic. And when I used to listen to myself, even my first year when I was brand new at this, I'd be like, nope, I'm never doing this again. However, I didn't really know what went into being my best. So what I found for myself was just the research that I had to do to make sure everything I was saying was correct, and everything that I was focusing on and everything that I was building on in each game was something different, something exciting, something the fans could grasp onto and understand. So research and really just challenging yourself, listening to yourself, and trying to better yourself each game. I think if you're better than the game before, I think you can only be happy with your performance.
That's wonderful advice. Where can my listeners find you at on social media?
Oh my gosh. My Twitter is at dmags27. And the same thing for Instagram. I think it's at dmags_927. So I'm not really hard to find. I'm not very active on social media. I'm really busy. However, I do try to engage as much as I can once the leagues have started up each year.
Thank you again, Danielle Malagari, for your interview, and best of luck in your future as the color commentator for the NWSL.
Thank you so much. Take care.
You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Facebook at Brandon Sports Talk, Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at Talk_Brandon, and you can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again, Danielle, for the interview, and best of luck.
Thank you very much.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.